Yeah. Okay, the Jentry Podcast. I know that you will be loving it. We here to break it down so that you start to understand your local government. Who are the leaders? Time to get active, do something about it. Dealing with jobs, the workforce, and affordable housing. Motivate and inspire. Elevate, take it higher. For the next generation. Knowledge is power for your community. Giving you the info that you really need. Time to make a change and a difference. Tune in, don't miss it. It's the Jentry. The Jentry Podcast. The Jentry Podcast. Making a change, switching it up.
Hello, and welcome to the Jentry Podcast. Today, we have another episode of our Jentry Future Leaders segment. Today, we have an incredible guest. We have Kristy Bradley, and she is the Assistant County Administrator of Cherokee County, South Carolina. She is a proud graduate of Clemson, and she has been in the South Carolina area doing so many things. So it's so impressive that at this point in her career, that she is already leading, but there's so much more to come. So Kristy, first and foremost, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. Taking a minute away from all the hustle and bustle is nice. So I'm great. I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, and I appreciate. I know it has to be busy down there. I'm in North Carolina, so not too far. But I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. So let's get right into it. What inspired you to pursue a career in local government?
So I did not set out initially, to pursue a career in local government. And I think a lot of people don't set out initially to pursue a career in local government at, this young of an age. I am only 31 only. So, and I think a lot of it is, people aren't coming into the schools early on to talk about how cool their local government job is, which is definitely a disservice to the field. And I can say I'm part of the problem because I have only gone and talked to schools maybe twice since I've been in local government. So I probably need to do more of that. But, and it's not as emphasized in schools so that, I think a lot of times you remember in school that, an astronaut, an engineer, a lawyer, a doctor, things like that. So in a similar fashion, whenever I set out on my career journey, I wanted to be an architect because that was really cool. And I love the intricacy of it. I loved, I was creative. I had attention to detail, all that good stuff, and it was cool. So yeah, and I've always wanted to do something for a grand purpose, make a big difference, and that felt like I could. However, the instant gratification millennial part of me realized that to be an architect, you really weren't going to be making this like grand, Frank Lloyd Wright difference when you're in your 20s. And so I did kind of shift into construction management and I was all in on that. I wanted to get as much skill and knowledge as possible in that field so that I could do something really cool in my career. But, I realized while I was in private construction very briefly that there wasn't a whole lot of purpose other than, I guess, more or less increasing the bottom line of somebody else. And so it kind of felt blah after a while. I was good at it and all that good stuff, but at the end of the day it was just like, what am I doing? And so, I came home every day late. And I looked at my son he was a teeny tiny baby at the time. I was in my early 20s, and I just thought, all the stress, all this time away from him, and what am I doing to really contribute to society and future generations? And so I did a pivot, and that's kind of what started my journey into government in general. And so I started out as a low-level field technician for the South Carolina Department of Transportation, and I did it really for the sake of my mental health, more time with my son, and just to see if doing something that made even a small difference for somebody else would give me, I guess, a sense of purpose in the world. So that's how it kind of started out.
Wow, a lot of things that you said resonate with me. First and foremost, that giving back to the next generation. I've never done this live, but I will say Jentry is having a web series in which we're bringing local leaders to speak to students, and recently graduated students around 18 to 25. So if you need an opportunity to talk to some young people, please let me
Yeah.
know. And I'll definitely
Yeah.
get you linked up with that. All jokes aside, it is just so important. I similarly, and I should have, because my mother worked in local government, but I didn't really see it as like a after college thing that you could do either. And the other thing that you teased out that I thought was so important was, so yeah, my first job was JP Morgan. No work-life balance, similar to what you were doing in construction management. And as I've gotten older, and now I now have a young son who's 14 months in a couple of days, that work-life balance is so important. So I definitely think Gen Z, so we're millennial Gen Z, they have it already. They know that they want work-life
Yeah.
balance, they want purpose, they want mental health support and boundaries. So I think they're already there. So I think careers in government would definitely fit them well. But so you got your first job. How did you land it? What was the application process like? And then what was your experience as a field technician?
So, and the reason, I went to Clemson, got out of Clemson, had a pretty construction management degree that cost me a bunch of money. And, I got into that good job in private construction and as a manager. And going into actually my first government job, I essentially kind of had to start over a little bit. But it was me taking a step back and figuring out what do I really want to do. And so in that kind of basic field technician, low manager position in road construction, I had to take that job because generally in transportation construction, if you do not have a professional engineering license, if you're not a civil engineer, um, the attitude generally is like you can't be in a management position in transportation construction. And so, the thing was, like, I knew I was qualified for the job. I knew that I could do it, but I guess my qualifications just weren't really recognized, which was fine. And so I did land that position fairly easily just because technically I was overqualified for the position. I was just underqualified to move up. So, obviously the process it wasn't very hard for me, like I said, just because I had decided I wanted to go work for government and I didn't care if I had to live in a one-bedroom apartment forever. So I was fine with taking something a step back and all that good stuff. So, but in all honesty, I took that position and I know nobody else saw it this way, but I walked in and I kind of was like, I'm going to change this. I'm going to change the system because I liked the job, but I knew, I couldn't sit in that job forever. So I was like, I know I want to move up. So I'm going to find a way to change this so that I can move up into a management position. And so, I've read the quote that says, a little delusion and audacity will get you very far. I think I was a little delusional. I was like 24. And so I was like, I'm going to figure this out and stay here, but I'm going to move up. And so I pushed actually, to the effect of I sent my qualifications. I sent, like, when I was at Clemson, what were my courses that I took that were related to the job in management that I wanted there. I sent all of that down to the state capitol and just trying to just explain, like, if you have a degree in construction management and you're not, required to stamp any documents with a, PE license, I feel like this job, you can be qualified to do those jobs. So, needless to say, less than a year later, they removed that license requirement for all of the construction offices at SCDOT. The offices that required you to, like, make plans and stamp plans, stuff like that. You have to have a PE for that. But I knew that managing the construction projects, that degree and that kind of experience, I was qualified to do it, and anybody else was as well. And so I felt like I walked into a dead end job and based on my qualifications, but I was able to turn that into a career path. The other thing was, in that job, I learned a lot because being a female, and I was the only female obviously in that office and not an engineer. Same, I was also not, I was the only not engineer that wanted to be in management in that office. It meant that I had to work harder. It meant that I had to know know more than everybody around me because they didn't expect me to. And, if I wanted to move up and I wanted to, really get to the next level and people recognize that, I had to study harder. I had to read the specifications more than the other person. I had to know the answers to the questions. When I would go out and a contractor would expect me not to know, I had to make sure that I knew more. And although that doesn't exactly seem fair, that type of adversity was really what made me into the professional that I am today. So I honestly am grateful for that time and that experience that I had, being the person, I guess you call like the underdog, the person that doesn't that's not supposed to go anywhere, but tried to. So I was really thankful for that kind of first dive into government.
That's an incredible story. That shows somebody who just wanted it more than the people around her. And that is very impressive.
Thank you.
Man, going down to the state capitol and literally getting the the requirement removed, like that is next level. And for all the young people listening and watching, this is the level of resilience and audacity. I love that you put that. I recently did a podcast with he's millennial running for Congress, and he was like, you have to have that audacious hope, and like I think that's what you had. And I don't even think it's delusion, because you saw it, and even if nobody else sees it, you saw it. I really applaud that. Outside of just sheer grit, what are some of the skills that you said your construction degree? What are some of the skills that you were able to use once you got that management?
So I said that, attention to detail is something. That's why I wanted to be an architect, because I would literally like look at houses and buildings and I would sit down and I would draw them. And like, I had a lot of attention to detail and I appreciated detail. And so, whenever you're in a management position, I think that especially in construction and things like that, you have to really read. You have to appreciate, like, the specification book at DOT is like 1,000 pages. And so you have to like really want to get into the nitty-gritty of it if you want to like know how it all works. And I like that kind of thing. And so that was something that helped. I felt like I wanted to be a resource for others, especially when I got into like the management position and I had, the field inspectors that worked for me. Um, I wanted to be a good resource. I wanted to, you know, when they had a question, I wanted to be able to point them in the right direction, show them, where to find things. And so I think that helped. The other thing was being resourceful myself. As a young manager, the thing about it is you can't walk into a job and act like you know everything or think that you know everything and how it all works, because people don't take well to that. You don't get a lot of good response out of that, especially in construction. And B, you don't know everything. And the only way for you to know everything is to be resourceful and to be able to lean on the people that do know everything. That person might be a field engineer that works for you that's been doing it for 20, 30 years. But if they have something that will help you be better at your job and they have information like that, then you tap into it. Tractors, you know, my job a lot of times was to make sure that they were doing what they were supposed to do. But the ones that have been doing it for some of them 50 plus years, those guys that have seen everything, I made them a resource. They knew that I was there to like slap their hand if I was, if they were doing something they weren't supposed to. But at the same time, I developed like some camaraderie and some understanding and respect with them because they have seen a lot more than I had at that point. And anything that, they wanted to share with me that would help me in my job, I was a sponge, because I knew that, as a manager and as a young manager, that's how you learn. That's how you grow faster. Instead of sitting around and waiting for those things to happen to you over the course of 30 or 40 years, and learning that way, tapping into resources and people that have seen it before, that's where you grow the fastest. So those kind of skills were really important to me early on in management.
That's impressive. I heard a lot there. I heard attention to detail, heard great listener, heard networking, connections creation, then relying on smart people. That is like if I could like sum up my management style, it would be just that. I try to talk to smart people, learn as much as I can, and let them be great. Because I may not know what they know, and I may not know what I don't know, but people that have been in industry, subject matter experts that you've crafted a real relationship with can be that outlet. So I applaud you there now. So you're a young manager, and then how do you get to your role now? What was that transition? Was that always in the cars? Did you know you wanted to do
Yeah.
this? What was the progression?
Yeah, I touched on the first couple of roles, and the thing was, especially I'm newly in my 30s, but through my 20s and even now, I was hungry. I was like, I knew I wanted to keep moving up, not just because of the title and things like that, but because like being able to be a decision maker and being able to make an impact was important. There are a lot of times as a young manager in the younger, in the at my first role at DOT and my second role at DOT, because within a year, like I said, whenever they removed that requirement, I immediately went for a position still in DOT. It was a senior project manager, which I was at that point I was qualified for since they removed the licensing requirement. And so it was in an office, a different DOT office, but it was in a larger county than Cherokee County. And so they did bigger projects and they had that opening come up. So I put in for that and I got it. And so the thing about it was when I was in that role, and it was a more senior role than the first one. I was in over my head, but I figured it out. But the thing when I was in that role, it was like there were things I saw that I couldn't really control where I was at, but I was like, this could be made better. This could be more efficient. This could, we could have done this better. And so my thought process was I want to be able to eventually be in that room and make that decision so that, I can make things better. And so that was always in the cards, is to try to get to a role where I can do that. So I loved working at DOT. I loved being a senior project manager. In that office, I was able to learn a lot, similar to what I was saying. I was on big projects, interstates, bridges, stuff like that. And I learned I had never built a bridge before. I had never built an interstate before. And so I leaned heavy on, the good contractors. My boss, he was awesome. I think that's a big part of moving up in the world, is having good bosses, because, he wasn't a micromanager. He wanted me to learn. He wanted me to eventually be him. And that was something that, so he was really good at making sure I had everything I needed to be successful. And so after a few years of doing that, I would say that people started to notice me a little bit. They noticed what I was doing. I was also, the only female in that role. So it's just one of those things, you don't intentionally want to be noticed sometimes, but you are. And so I had job offers from contractors, obviously, that I worked with, and those were really tempting. A few times, because private work versus public, it's like, man, that's a big paycheck. But then I had to always step back and remember, like, why did I get out of that, whenever I initially did? Because that's the thing, whenever you have potential, whenever you're moving your way up, especially when you're in government, it's easy to lose your way if you're good at your job, because people will notice you and people will try to drag you over here and over here. And so one of my biggest things was that I wanted to stay in government. I wanted to stay on the track where, like I said, ultimate goal was to be able to be in the room of making those decisions that will more positively impact people. So, I think probably after 3 or 4 years at DOT, I turned down the opportunities from private contractors, but somebody from the city of Greenville in South Carolina did notice me, and they did offer me a job as a capital projects manager for the city of Greenville. So that would be going from state government, doing, interstate bridges, stuff like that, to more local government. The city of Greenville is there's a lot of up and coming areas in upstate South Carolina, but the city of Greenville is kind of one of the first frontiers, I guess you would say. They're one of the major hubs in upstate South Carolina. So I was like, this is definitely different, but I felt like I decided to go out on a limb and go into, local government, smaller projects. But what I found was that although those types of projects were smaller in dollar amount, they did give me the most purpose. I was able to see the impact of those projects. So one of the things is when I got into that role was whenever I started understanding local government, liking local government even more, even though, leaving DOT, I will say that was one of the hardest decisions I think I've ever made. I realized that for growth and for what I was passionate about, going into local government was for me. And so I was able to do things outside of just managing a construction project from start to finish at the city of Greenville. I got into kind of more of the front end stuff, engaging with the community, going to the community meetings, seeing what do they need infrastructure wise. And so I managed the city's asphalt program. And so that was something, same thing. I would get with residents, I would get with communities and make that plan and do stuff like that. So it opened my eyes to just how much of an impact I could make in local government for the people that I worked for. And the only thing was that I continued to live in Cherokee County because that's my home. And so I commuted a little over an hour every day to the city of Greenville to serve the people in that community. So I guess the one thing that was missing after I got into local government and I really enjoyed it was that I was serving people and I enjoyed that, but I wanted to serve my people. And so my community, that felt like that would be, I wouldn't say the last step, but pretty much the last step to complete what I wanted to do. So I think about 2 years into being at the city of Greenville, I happened upon a job opening for Cherokee County for the assistant county administrator. And I saw it and I was like, first of all, I'm not qualified, but have I ever been? And so I applied for it. And long story short, I did not get it. And so I was pretty upset, but I stayed, just stayed at it at the city of Greenville and kept doing what I was doing. And I was like, maybe something else will come along, but I was happy in my job. I enjoyed it. So I was like, it's okay. And less than a year later, and the person that took that job resigned and it became open again in Cherokee County. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try again. I mean, what does it hurt? And so I tried it again and I got the job. And since January of this year, this has been my role. So I still apply my knowledge to infrastructure and transportation every day. Cherokee County is small, so they don't have an engineering department. They don't have stuff like that. It's me, basically. So I still get to do what I've done in my professional career thus far. But it was a huge pivot, though, as far as career path, just because I was on track in transportation construction, and this put me just directly into right in the center of local government, just general. And so the job responsibilities expanded greatly. So that's where I am now.
That is incredible. It sounds like you were patient, again, resilient. And then when it was your time, you capitalized on it. And now you're able to bring all the skill sets that you had in the past to this new role. Well, you're in the role that is a culmination of your skill sets, but then serving your community. What does I know it can't be similar every day, but what does a day in the life look like for you?
So I honestly had to write down all the different things that I'm responsible for because I knew I would forget one because it's
Nice.
so me. So basically, a day in the life, I'll start out by saying in this role, essentially, I'm involved in property and asset acquisition for the county, roads and bridges projects, landfill operations, animal shelter, policies and procedures, human resources, procurement, staffing, long range and master planning, emergency management, 911 dispatch, taxing and assessment, EMS, economic development, recreation, building codes, recycling, operations, solid waste management, contracts. I say all that to say that every day looks very different. So, what as far as like my day in the life, I am big on prioritization and organizing my day. And actually, whenever I think I do like department head meetings and stuff once a month, and I try to share things with them to maybe help them and stuff, and they help me too. But one of the things that I think on the last meeting that I put together was for them different ways to schedule your day, different ways to prioritize tasks. I had to research all the models and what other people use because stepping into this role, I've always been good with doing a lot at one time and handling a lot at one time just because in construction it's a very dynamic environment. But coming into this role, it was like if I don't make sure I have it down, I'm going to forget something very important. And so what I do, I mean, every night before I go to bed, I write my list of, I do, what's red, what's yellow, what's green for the next day. Like, what do I have to accomplish or else something's going to fall through the cracks? What do I want to accomplish? Probably need to. And then what can wait if I don't get to it? And so that's kind of when I go into work in the morning, I've got that ready. And obviously, things come up throughout the day with all of those different things going on. But I make sure to adhere to my reds no matter what I have to do. I block out my calendar. I'm big on calendars, 30-minute intervals of I need to do this for 30 minutes. I need to do this for 30 minutes just to make sure things get done. So my day in the life is very fun. Yesterday I was at the animal shelter. I was with Roads and Bridges. I was in a meeting about our fleet vehicles. I was working on a contract. We're building a new public works facility, so I'm trying to do some acquisition stuff with that. I think that was just half the day, but I can't really remember the first half. So I enjoy it because it's just like, you don't get bored. And one thing I like is that, like, if I do, unless I absolutely have to be doing something, like if I hit a wall and I'm like, God, this is boring. I don't want to do this. Like if it's like a contract thing, I'll just get up and I'll be like, the animal shelter probably needs me. And so I go to the shelter. And help them out. So that's pretty much what my days look like.
Wow. That is incredible. I haven't heard a list like that, I don't think, ever. It sounds like you're in charge of the entire government.
Yeah.
But wow. But I can see in your face that you're passionate about it and that you love it. And I know, like they say, it's impossible to only have one, but they say it's impossible to pick your favorite child. What is the point of your job or the part of your job that you love the most if you had to just pick one?
So kind of what I've talked about a few times is that I enjoy feeling like I'm making an impact, making a difference. And honestly, the small ones, the small impacts, the small wins pretty much keep me going. So when one person says thank you for something that I was able to do in this role, or whenever one animal is saved because of something I was able to make happen, that's ultimately what it's all about for me. That's what keeps me going. I mean, for example, I think it was, what day is it? Thursday. So Tuesday night, Kelly, our animal shelter director, she works for me in county government, rural county government. It's very small. It's under-resourced. It's not atypical of other rural governments. And so I do wear a lot of hats, which is why, like you said, it's kind of like the whole government, because there is only one me, and then there's not enough people in each department. So I try to step in where I can to help them. My administrator, Merv, he's awesome. I always make sure I have good bosses. And so he handles a lot of stuff, but I kind of get really into the departments to help them where they need help. So Tuesday night, Kelly, our director, calls and they got an animal in, and his name was George. And he was in deplorable conditions. His fur was all matted up. And I mean, he looked pitiful. And she said, I want to get him groomed. I want somebody to get all these mats off him, give him some dignity, make him maybe more comfortable while he's here until I can get him rescued out. And I'm like, well, go home, Kelly. I'm going to work on this. And I'm, trying to reach out to every grooming place in Cherokee County and just see, like, would anybody volunteer their time to get George groomed. And within 24 hours, he was at a groomer having a spa day. And it's small. It's so small, but literally, like, that's what keeps me going. I do a lot of big stuff. I'm working a lot of big things for the county right now, and it's great. It's fun. It's great to be a part of. But my favorite parts are just those little things that I can try to make happen for people and animals.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it definitely sounds like you have a soft spot for the animals. And I do too. Just thinking about George and got to have his spa day, came out looking good, probably had his confidence up. So I could definitely appreciate that. Now, when people think of government, especially people like ourselves that are further into our career, we may start to think about government from a lifestyle. And you mentioned that. Like in things like benefits, job security, and time management and family. When I was 18, I was not thinking like that. Could you maybe explain to our younger viewers how the working for the government can impact your lifestyle and around those things?
Yes. So, similar to you, whenever I was 18, 19, 20, 21, and in college, I mean, I was like, I'm going to go run this company and work my tail off all the time and all this other stuff and make a bunch of money. And one of the things was that I learned, and very quickly, I feel like I'm pretty capable. I feel like I love work. I love hard work, but burnout is a real thing, and it can happen fairly quickly if you do not do something about it. And your job, your career and your job, I mean, ultimately it's where you spend the most time. It's one of the biggest parts of your life, whether you have a family or not. If you have a career, I mean, you spend a lot of time, I mean, at your career. So the thing about what I wish and what I would want people to know is that it sounds great, and you're young, you've got energy. I still like to think I do, but it's not sustainable. It's not, healthy if you are constantly on the grind and don't really have a purpose behind it other than I just want to make as much money as I possibly can and, soar through the ladder and all this other stuff. And the thing about government work is what I've found is the difference between private work and government work is you will burn out if you have a lot of passion, if you have a lot of drive in the private sector, because the thing about it is that they will take and take and take because they see that. I mean, they see your potential. And I mean, any place will, but the thing about government is there is a line. You can step back generally, and not every culture is the same in every government. Every office is different, but I try to look and make sure that the offices that I go into understand that I love my job and I'm very passionate and I'm going to give it everything that I have. But my mental health and my family and, me, I'm going to put that first. If I start taking myself towards a total burnout, I'm going to step back for a minute and regroup. And, in a private setting, and what I found, and not everyone's this way, but a lot of them, if you were to say that, if then it's like, okay, well then bye. I think that government, I enjoy. I don't feel like the burnout happens as quickly because the thing about it is, even though I'm working my butt off, just like I was for a private company, I feel like I'm working for something. I feel like I'm working for something that has a purpose, and that, it fills my cup basically. And when I can go home and I can tell my family about these things that I'm working on and that we were able to accomplish, it feels good and it kind of refuels me versus just coming home drained and not really, having to get up and do it again. So I think that typically working in government, even though it doesn't feel attractive whenever you're in college or whatever, you can move up, you can work hard, you can climb the ladder, but you also are able to maintain a balance, and with benefits, stuff like that. To be honest, I feel like I do have children, so I guess I should be more thinking responsible about that kind of stuff, but I still don't really, I'm glad the benefits are there. It's great. And I know that I will super appreciate those in about 30 years maybe if I retire. But it is one of those things that as a person, when I go to the ER, normally the benefits in government are a lot better than something else. And when I go to the ER, I'm worried about my health condition. I'm not as worried about the fact that I'm about to be in some serious debt. And so that is actually nice. And then with kids, I have an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old. And my 8-year-old's very accident prone. He's a boy. So it is nice whenever I get the phone call from the nurse's office that, Mason's fallen off the monkey bars and broken his arm. I'm like, okay, like it's going to be okay because I will be able to afford this because I have good insurance. And so that's a huge pro. I mean, especially right now, times are hard and doctor bills are very high. Whether you make a good salary or not, it's like one trip to the emergency room can break anybody. So I will say that that's a huge, huge plus. And then same like government has, and I'm working, one of the things in my role that I'm able to kind of work on is what can we offer our employees? How much more can we offer our employees? So, mental health, more of that, fitness stuff. We're trying to work on building a gym and things like that. Like I want to be able to offer them as much as possible so that they have a good balance, so that they, are healthy, so that they're ready to work and they're, mentally stimulated and okay. And I think that government it's the place to go if you don't want to work yourself to death. I do get time off. I don't really use a lot of it, but it's there whenever I need it. I'm pro. One of the things about government is, for a long time it was people that were a lot older than us that had very old ideas. I think that we're finally starting to see the tides turning a little bit. Like for me, for example, I had somebody that she's got little kids too, my assistant, and her son is 2. Starting up school again. She was stressed about, what am I going to do when he gets sick? I don't have enough leave time. Like I have a lot of work to do. And I'm just so like, what do I do when I wake up and it's going to be so stressful that he's sick again? And I immediately issued her a laptop and I said, look, like, don't worry about it. Just keep that at home and have it ready. And if you don't want to use your time off and you want to get some things done while, they're laying in the bed and sleeping, then work from home. Don't stress about that kind of stuff because that's not what it should be about. And so I think that's one of the things that I enjoy about this type of work is the flexibility, making sure, as a leader, I want to make sure that family is important. I know I want them to come do a job, but at the end of the day, like it's not the most important thing.
I respect that. And I think for all our viewers, I think you displayed what the shift is. Now there are people like yourself that are in charge that come from the generation that cares about mental health, cares about boundaries, cares about work-life balance. So the pendulum is shifting and maybe it wasn't always like this, but that pendulum is shifting. My final question before we end it here, if you could give yourself one piece of advice, or maybe think of some young version of you that's 18 years old at Clemson and thinking about potentially going into a career in public service, what piece of advice would you give?
Well, I would say, being a driven young person, when you think about public service, and me, when I was 18, my family, my dad, my uncle, they all work for the government. They have for a long time. Something a lot of times at that age, when you think about government, especially the attitude about it today, you think, oh, all those slow, lazy people up there that take 2 months to get anything done, like that's boring. I don't want to do that. I thought the same thing. And I would have challenged myself to actually look into it more. There's a lot of sectors in government, kind of like what I just laid out, all those different things that I kind of manage on the day to day. Your skill set, everybody I feel like should have a purpose, a skill set, a passion, because that's who's best at their job. And so, um, you can have any skill set just about in the world as a young person in college, um, and you can apply it in public service. And, because a lot of people don't realize just how much government touches, how much good, as if you're an accountant, you can have a great government career and make a positive difference. The government needs good accountants. The government needs, when I worked at the city of Greenville managed a zoo. and and so part of the government staff was veterinarians, zookeepers, and these people were able to do something positive and impactful even in those roles. I think that, I would have challenged myself to actually dive deeper into what all government does, because I didn't know it at the time. Even, with having family in government, I didn't really tap into it or look into it. All I cared about was, how am I going to get a good job after college and make a bunch of money? And I still ended up here anyway. So that's what I would have challenged myself to do, was that.
I think that's a great challenge to all our viewers. There's just a breadth of opportunities at the government level that I do feel people only think you're just going to be some locked in a room bureaucrat that is slow moving. It's like, wow, zookeepers, veterinarians, like anything and everything, social media, accountants, engineers, you name it, there is a spot for you. So take your talent, your skill set, as you said, and use that for good. Use that to serve the people of your community. So no, thank you so much, Kristy.
Yeah,
This has
thank you.
been an incredible. I feel like we've all learned so much, and I'm excited to continue to watch your career. I know that the sky's the limit, and I'm happy for the people, pseudo neighbors down in Cherokee County to have you. So thank you from everybody here at Gentry. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
For sure. And to all our viewers, thank you again. This has been Kristy Bradley, the Assistant County Administrator of Cherokee County, South Carolina. And I'm Jonathan, your host. Have a great one.